What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another Swift video. In today's video, we're going to do a deep dive on consumable in-app purchases, and we're going to be building the app you see here. So basically, we're going to have an app where the user can purchase and store diamonds, and of course, they can purchase different quantities. So let's go ahead and we're going to buy 1,000 because we're super loaded. Let's go ahead and hit that button to confirm. We'll see the transaction goes through, and more importantly, we'll go and see that our actual count goes up. When we close the app, let's switch to dark mode to make sure that looks nice and good. And come back, you'll see that the amount is persisted. So we are indeed saving the newly added and purchased diamonds. And it works in all these different quantities. We'll look at creating the UI and all that good stuff. So as always, let's get started by absolutely destroying that like button. I'm going to be annoying and say it twice. Hit that like button. It helps out video engagement, YouTube algorithm, all that good stuff. Helps me make more videos for all of you. Hit subscribe while you're at it if you're a returning viewer. Get Xcode ready. Get excited. Let's talk about some in-app purchases. All right, we're going to begin by opening up Xcode and creating a new project. We're going to stick with an app template, and I'm going to go ahead and call this Consumable IAPs. Make sure your language, of course, is Swift, Lifecycle UI Kit, and Interface Storyboard. Go ahead and continue. We will save it to our desktop. Looks good, looks good. And once Xcode is ready, go ahead and expand your window to give yourselves a little more room to work. Let's pick a simulator. I'll stick with the 12 Pro Max since I've got it booted already. Hit that run button so it gets nice and ready for us. And let's see, we should see an open empty app here, just like so, and let's get into it. So we're gonna need essentially two things in this project. A UI where the user can go and basically see how many diamonds they already have purchased, basically that are saved, and then of course go and initiate more purchases. And then we also need a class that's gonna handle basically queuing up those purchases. So our view controller will be where our UI is, and we're going to need another object like mentioned. So let's go ahead and create a new file. And we're going to do this from bare bones scratch. So select Swift file. And I'm going to go ahead and call this, let's call this IAP manager for in-app purchase manager. Let's go drag this up. And let me just stub this out. And then we'll go and set up the UI quickly since it's fairly simple. But basically, this is going to be a final class IAP manager. We're going to have a shared instance on this, which is going to make this a singleton. If you're not familiar with singletons, I've got a video on that, so go ahead and take a look at that. And let's see, we're also going to need to initiate in-app purchases. So let's go ahead and import StoreKit, and we'll see how to set this up in a moment. And let's go back to our view controller. So what I'm going to do here is you can set up your UI any different way, but we're going to set up a table view. And we're going to, like I showed you in the beginning, going to be allowing users to purchase diamonds in the quantities of 500, 1,000, 2,500, and 5,000. And at the top here, we're going to show how many diamonds the user currently has purchased. And that's going to persist between app opens and closures. So we're going to go and create a table view on here. So I'm going to say let table view is a UI table view. And this is going to be a very, very basic table view. Nothing fancy going on here. We're just going to create it in this anonymous closure. We're going to go ahead and return it. And we definitely want to spell it correctly because that's slightly important. You want to go ahead and register a cell, and let's give it an ID of cell. I'm not going to do any custom cells or any of that stuff here since we want to keep this nice and simple. Let's go ahead and add this as a subview. Let's assign its delegate, and let's assign its data source, and let's also give it a frame of view.bounds. So it takes up the entirety of the screen. Let's not forget to conform to the delegate and data source protocols up here. Sometimes autocomplete likes to throw in some random code, so make sure you get the right one up there. So once you have those implemented, it's going to give you an error because there are two minimum functions you need. Go ahead and hit fix, and it'll stub it out for you. And let me just move these down here, make it a little cleaner. For number of rows, we're going to say return models.count. Don't worry, we haven't created this yet for models. Here we're going to say let cell equals table view, and we're going to dequeue a reusable cell with a identifier and an index path. Identifier will be cell because that's what we registered up above. Here we're going to say cell. Here we're going to say text label dot text we're going to assign to something, and text label cell dot image view dot image is going to be a UI image. And I grabbed a system image before. I thought I did at least. I believe it is called suit diamonds.fill. I grabbed this from SF Symbols. It's just a diamond shape, just so it looks nice and professional. Let's give it a tint color of, let's go to system blue. And let's create that models up here and run our app to make sure we're in business. So models is going to be an array of models. And I'm going to come up here and create this array of models, create a struct for model, which is going to be what we put in the models array. And a model is basically going to have a title on it, and it's going to have a handler, which is going to be a closure that takes no parameter and returns void. And instead of doing it like this and creating it out here, let's say this is an array of models. Go ahead and create it like that. And here we'll configure our models. And I know I'm going through this kind of quickly. Don't worry, I'm going to review all of it. But basically, we're going to say, let's just append a model in here one at a time. The first one is going to be 500 diamonds. The next, and then this thing is going to be a closure. We're going to leave that empty. And go ahead and copy and paste that 3 more times and just update this number. So what did I say? 500, 1,000, 2,500, and 5,000. And I think we should be good to go. Here, we just want to update this to use the title from the model. So here we're going to say the model is a model. Let's get it with the index path dot row. And here we can say this is the title. I think we're in business. Go ahead and hit Command R to build and run, and you should see your table view here. Hopefully I didn't forget anything. Next up, we'll look at how we actually go ahead and prompt the purchase. So looks like we don't see our image. I might have spelt this wrong. So let's go ahead and open up SF Symbols. And let's look for diamonds in here. Let's see, it's suit.diamond.fill, so it's not plural. Let's drop that S. Let's run that one more time. And awesome, looking good. So we've got our diamond, we've got our quantities here, and we select it. Nothing's happening at the moment, but we're going to kick off a purchase. So when we select it, we want to implement did select row at index path. We want to deselect that given row at the index path with an animation. And then we want to get the model and just kick off its handler. So I'm going to copy and paste that. And here we'll say model.handler and add 2 parentheses to kick it off. So what else do we need to do? So we need to set up the IAP manager here. And there's going to essentially be 2 things that we need to do here. One is going to be fetch the products from the App Store, and we're going to set up a debug file in our project so we can test it locally on the simulator. And we also need a way to kick off a purchase. So first, let's create a function called fetch products. We're going to have an array on here, which is going to hold those products, which is of type sk product. And it's going to be an empty array by default, and it's a product, not a discount. Let's get rid of that. And let's see, in here, what we want to go ahead and do is say request is going to be an sk product request. And this gets created with product IDs. Whoops, we want this one here, product IDs. I'll fill that out in a second. We're going to say request.delegate is self and request.start. Now we want to conform to 2 protocols up here, sk product request delegate and sk payment transaction observer. And there are 2 functions we want to implement here. The first one is product requested finish. We're going to say self.products equals response.products. just like that. And then here we want to implement updated transactions. This one right here, and this is where we handle the actual transaction once it gets kicked off. So it's actually quite simple. We'll implement it in just a moment. But let's see, what else do we need to do in here? We do need apparently something else because it's complaining. So the reason it's complaining is the class that conforms to these needs to be of type NSObject. And we need to add that up there because the reason it needs to be of NSObject is because Apple has not updated these protocols yet to be non-Objective-C supportive. In other words, they're still bridged with Objective-C, hence the NS on here. So just make sure you add that and you'll see that error go away. Now, when our app launches, we want to kick off fetching the products right away. So we're going to go to app delegate. And to get this window, you hit Command-Shift-O to search your project for files. And in application did finish launching, we're going to say IAP manager shared.fetch products, just like that. And that'll fetch your products as soon as your app launches. So you'll be good to go and kicking off purchases so the user doesn't have to wait. And now let's actually fill in the product IDs. So you can just hard code them in. But what I like to do, and what I recommend you guys do as well, is create an enum of product. And in here, each of your cases can serve as a product with a given ID. So I'm going to say here string and case iterable. And we're going to say diamond underscore 500. And this is going to be, we can just leave it as is, but you can specify your own custom ID here. But I'm just going to leave it like that since we'll just use this as the ID itself. Go ahead and copy and paste that. And just change up the values here. And now what you can do is in this array, rather this actually needs a set, not an array, this parameter. You can say product dot all cases, and you can say compact map $0 dot raw value, if I'm not mistaken, and you can wrap this whole thing into a set, and that should be good. So basically what you're saying is take all of these cases in the enum, get all of them, and then convert them all just to their raw value, which in this case will just be the case. So anytime you want to add a new product in your app, you can just add a case here and everything will just magically work, which is really nice. It makes your app really extendable. So now that we have this set up, basically this is going to go to the App Store and try to get the products. And we are running in a debug environment and we haven't set up the App Store, nor is it supported in the simulator. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is bring in a new file. And that new file is actually new for Xcode 12. It's called a StoreKit configuration file. And you don't need this to be checked, but just go ahead and create it. And you can actually create all of your products in here and you can test live in the simulator. Now it's important that your product IDs do match. So I'm just going to copy this first one. And when we come back to this file, we can hit at the bottom left here, this plus, and we can hit add consumable product. And we're going to want 4 of them. So go ahead and hit that 3 more times, just like that. All right. And then let's go ahead and paste in our ID. So this is 500 diamonds. And this one is going to be 1,000 diamonds. This one will be, whoops, let's not select them all. It's not what we want to do. This one's going to be 1,500 unless I'm mistaken. And this name I'm filling up here is just a reference name. It's not the actual name that's going to show up in the table view. Just be mindful of that. This is 25. Here we're going to say 2,500 diamonds. And each of these products actually has associated metadata, which we're not going to fill out for now since we hard-coded in our table view the names. However, you probably do want to fill this stuff out. And when you do fetch the products from the App Store, instead of hard-coding your models like we do here, you want to actually use the title and the description returned from the App Store, since that's basically something you can control remotely. And that also supports all the different languages, assuming you supply them. So now that we have this file set up, let's go ahead and make sure everything is saved. We can actually run it and see that our products do come back. And let's see how we can do that. So in our IAP manager, let's go ahead and let's print out here response.products.count. And I'm going to say products returned, put a colon and just stick that in right there. And one thing that's really important to do when you're testing this on a simulator is hit this list, hit edit scheme, and you want to actually supply that StoreKit file right here. So it says StoreKit configuration. We're going to say configuration.storekit, which is the file we just created. Go ahead and close that. And I know there was quite a bit of setup, so go ahead and hit this play button. Let's make sure it's working, and we'll review that in just a moment. So we should see print down here that we returned 3 products. So we should have 4. So something's up. So we did 500, 1,000, 25, and 5,000. I'm 99% sure I made a typo in here. So let's see, we've got 500, 1,000, 2,500, and this one should be 5,000 actually, not 15. I had a feeling I was typing that incorrectly. Go ahead and hit Command R one more time, and you should see now 4 products. So now when we click on any of these, we want to kick off the actual purchase. So for that, we're going to go back to this IAP manager, and we're first going to implement this, and we're also going to need to create a function called purchase. And this purchase is going to take a product, which will be our enum for product, just like that. And in here, in this function, all we're going to want to do is, given the parameter of transactions, we're just going to want to do a for loop on these. So we're going to say transactions for each. And in here, we're going to switch on $0, and $0 just represents the given transaction that we're iterating over and its transaction state. And you'll see an error here, and you can just click on this and hit fix, and it'll go ahead and stub all of these out for you. And let's go ahead and clear all of these and change them all to breaks for now. And we're going to need to implement purchased here in a moment. Let's just leave it there for now. And in this function, what we're going to do is we're going to first make sure that the user can make purchases. So we're going to say guard sk payment queue default. Whoops, actually not default, to take that back. Can make purchases. Else we're going to return. We're also going to want to make sure that we can find the product in this products array with the given ID. So here we're going to say guard let StoreKit product is going to be products, plural, first where $0 dot product identifier equals product.raw value. So this product here that we're passing in, I feel like I'm saying it weird, just to specify not the plural version, is what we're passing in, which is our enum here. So we're going to try to pull out of the array the StoreKit product, that the first one that matches the ID. All IDs have to be unique, so we don't have to worry about duplicates. And then here, what we can go ahead and do is we can say that we want to create a payment request, which is a SK payment with a given product, which is our StoreKit product that we just pulled out. We can then say SK payment queue defaults, and we can say add observer. We want to add self as the observer. And then what we want to go ahead and do is say SK payment queue. We can actually copy and paste this, and we can actually add the payment request now. And what this will do is this will kick off the payment, and you'll see the bottom sheet pop up on your simulator like a normal in-app purchase. So go ahead and hit Command R to build and run, and let's just click on one of these. And actually nothing is happening, and the reason nothing is happening is because I never hooked up these handlers in these models. So on this one, we're going to say IAP manager, shared, and here we're going to say purchase. And the first one is going to be diamonds 500. Let's go ahead and just copy and paste these. It will just change up the products that we're passing in. Control I to fix up your indentation there. This one's going to be 1,000. This one will be 2,500, and this one will be 5,000. Go ahead and hit Command R to build and run. And let's say we try to purchase 500 diamonds. We click on that, and it looks like, there it goes, a little slow. So you might want to show a spinner while it's loading. And it looks like this popped up here. So we have 500 diamonds. We have the price, which is 99 cents. If you're wondering where that price is coming from, it's coming from our configuration file here. You'll also notice that we're not showing any description or anything here either. And that's because we never set up this localized information here. But the cool thing is that it's working now. The next thing that we want to do is once a user purchases these, we want to save it to device so we know how many actual diamonds they have. And then we also want to show it up here, and we're going to use a header to do that. So I am going to go back to the view controller, and here we're going to create a computed property, and this is going to be my diamonds count, which is going to return an integer. And we're going to return user defaults, where we're going to save basically the number of diamonds we have. And we're going to say integer for key diamond count. And if this is nil for whatever reason, it's going to go ahead and return 0. And here I'm going to create another function that's going to say set up header. And here we're going to create a header and add it to our given table view. So here we're going to say this is a UI view. We're going to say table view dot header view. Table header view is going to be our header, just like that. And our header is going to have two things in it. It's going to first have an image view, and this image view is going to be a standard image view with a given image. And once again, we're going to stick with that system item, and rather system image. And I believe once again it was called suits.diamond singular.fill. Let's go ahead and add it as a subview to our header. We're going to want to add a frame to it in a moment, but before we do that, let's go ahead and create a label. And this label will be essentially the label that shows our count. Whoops, this is going to show the count of diamonds we have at the moment. So here we're going to say header, add subview label. Here we're going to say text alignment is center, so it just looks a little nicer. Label.text is going to be our my diamond count, diamonds. And let's go ahead and give this stuff some frames. So the frame for the header is just going to be 0, 0, view.frame.size.width, and then just paste that again in here. And let's see, we're going to give our image a size as well. So let's give this a frame of let's see, let's make this 100 by 100. From the top, we'll say it's 10. And the x's, we want this to be centered. So we're going to say the frame of the width of the frame minus 100 divided by 2. And the label, we'll give this guy a frame as well. And this is going to be 10, 120, view.frame.size.width minus 20, and 100. And I believe we should be good to go. So let me just give this a tint color also, so it looks like the ones in our table view. I think we went with system blue. And let's also bump up the font size on the label just so it doesn't look totally ugly. We'll say this is system font of 24 with a, rather 25 with a weight of bold. And before you actually run it, like I did there, make sure you call this function at the bottom of view to load. What is it called? Set up header, just like that. Go ahead and hit Command R, and you should see a header appear now, just like that, nice and big. And whenever we select one of these and purchase it, we should update basically this header. And that would also imply that we update our user defaults and add in the number of diamonds we purchased. So how do we do that? How do we make that magic happen? So what I'm going to do is we're going to go back to the IAP manager, and we're going to add a parameter to this purchase method. And this is going to be called completion. And it's going to be an escaping closure that takes in a parameter of integer and returns void. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is we're going to take this type, and we're going to create it here as a private var. private var, and it's going to be called completion of the same type, but it's just going to be optional in this case. And whenever we call purchase, we're going to say self.completion equals completion. And whenever we're done with the purchase, we're just going to go ahead and call that completion handler. And we need to pass in the number of diamonds that's associated with it. So what I'm going to do here on this enum is create a computed property again called count. And here we're going to switch self. And we're just going to go ahead and we're going to return the number of diamonds associated with each of these products. This is going to be an integer. This is going to be 500. I'll just paste that over and over and just change up this value here, 2,500, and that'll be 5,000. And let's see, so now we can actually say, we want to first get the product that's being purchased here and pass in its count. So what I'm going to say is if let product equals our product, and we're going to create it with the raw value of the transaction payment product identifier. If we're able to create a product, we're going to create the call the completion handler with product.count. And the last thing we need to do here is end each transaction. So here we're going to say sk payment queue, sk payment queue default, and we want to say finish transaction $0, and I believe we also need to call remove transaction. Looks like we don't actually. We just need to say remove observer, and that'll be self. And we're just going to ignore these other cases. We're just going to stick with purchased here for now. And that's all we need to do here in the IAP manager. We just need to add that parameter for the completion handler here. So we're going to do it as a trailing closure. And what do we need to do in here? We need to say weak self, and we're going to say count in. And basically what we want to do in each of these closures is first get the current count of the diamonds that we have, and this is going to be self.mydiamonds. And if we're not able to get it, we're going to say it's 0. Then we're going to want to say new count is current count plus count, and this count is what we just purchased. And then we're going to want to update our user defaults with this new count. So we're going to say standard. We're going to want to set new count for the same key. So let's be lazy and copy and paste this key. And absolute final thing I promise is what you need to do is update the header. So we're going to say set up header. And we just want to make sure that we do all of this on the main thread so we don't run into any issues. So go ahead and just wrap that in there. And actually, we're just going to be lazy once again and copy and paste this. You can probably make one function so it's not redundant, but you can copy and paste this in front of each of these calls and you should be good to go. I went through that very quick, so let's see if I made any mistakes. And if I didn't, we'll review all of it. So go ahead and hit Command R to build and run. And let's see if we're in business. So we've got 0 diamonds to start. We're going to hit 500. It's going to tell us it's $1. We're going to purchase it because we are loaded. And we see that we've purchased it. And we see this is now 500 diamonds. So let's actually go ahead and close the app. Let's reopen it. And you'll see we still have 500 diamonds. So looking good. So let's be a baller now and buy 5,000 because we're loaded, and not sure why this is also 99 cents. I guess whoever made this app is pretty dumb that they priced these the same, but let's go ahead and create this. And now you'll see we're at 5,500. So there you have it. That's how you can create this. And if you change this to dark mode with Command-Shift-A, you'll see that everything hopefully still looks pretty nice and good. And let's just try the other ones just for the sake of being complete here. So you'll notice it doesn't actually update until we click out of this alert, and that alert is a system alert that gets shown when a purchase goes through. So you might want to update this to update before this alert gets dismissed. It's up to you. I think I prefer it this way, so you know, you're not really messing with the order of operations on the Apple side of things. But that's how you do it basically. So let's do a quick review and then we'll wrap this video up. So there are two things that are going on, like I mentioned in the very beginning here. Our view controller is roughly 100 lines of code, and what do we have in here? We first have a struct which represents our model with a title and a handler, and this is what we're using for our table view rows. We've got a table view, pretty simple. We've got an array of our models. So now in view.load, we set up our models by appending one in at a time with a name, and this is just the name we want to show, and the handler basically kicks off a purchase operation, and once that operation is completed, it returns the count of how many diamonds were just purchased. We go ahead and save that into user defaults, and we recreate the header, so it updates the UI, and we basically do that redundantly over and over here. You could probably get away with putting this title into the products enum that we have in the other file and just do a for loop over it so it's not so redundant. But anyways, here we add the table view, we set its protocols, we give it a frame, we set up the header initially. Here we just return the number of rows, set up a basic cell. In deselect, we just kick off the handler for the model. For this computed property, which returns a number of diamonds, we return the number that is saved in user defaults. Now, one thing to keep in mind is the way consumable purchases work, if you delete the app and come back, it's going to start again at 0. So the way that we restore consumable purchases is quite interesting because you'd either need to store it on a remote server or not store it at all. And that's how we would support basically restoring of purchases, which we have not implemented here, but just a nice call out. And in setup header, all we do is create a view with a diamond image in it. We tack in a label and set the label's text to be the number of diamonds we have, and then assign it as our table's header. So moving on to the IAP manager, this file looks a little longer. Once again, only about 100 lines, a little shy of it. So here what we've got going on is we create this class, we make sure it's NSObject because these protocols require it to be Objective-C bridging. We conform to these protocols. Of course, don't forget to import StoreKit up here. And we have a completion on here. So when the transaction completes, we can call back to the caller. We have an array of products. We have an enum of products with the associated diamond counts. We've got a fetch function, which we call in the app delegate. So the products get fetched from the App Store as soon as your app launches. Next up, we have a callback for that product fetch. So we can save the products once we get them. And this purchase function is where the magic gets kicked off. We make sure the user can make purchases. And in a real world scenario, what this is doing is this is checking if the user has an Apple account set up on their device, AKA they're signed in with their Apple ID. Next up, we get the product from the products array based on the raw value, which should be the product ID. Then we save the completion parameter that was passed in. Make sure it's escaping so we can actually go ahead and save it. If it's not, you're going to run into an error. We create a payment request and kick it off. And last but not least, right in here, we went ahead and on the updated transactions, we for loop and switch the state. And in the purchased case, we get the count from the product enum, call it in the completion handler, finish the transaction, and remove the observer. So that's about it. Quickly looking at the configuration file, this just has mock data locally in Xcode, so you can test all this stuff in the simulator. This was new for Xcode 12, so if you're on an older version and don't see it, that's why. And the absolute last thing I'll mention is in a real project, you want to make sure you come here and for your target, come to this second tab here, and you want to go ahead and hit this little plus capability and make sure you add in-app purchases. And what this will do is it'll add the in-app purchase entitlement to your project. So when you submit it to the App Store, you're not going to run into any issues. So there you have it. A bit of a longer video than I initially intended this to be. So hopefully it was helpful, nice and thorough. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave them down below. If you haven't done so already, make sure you absolutely destroy that like button as per usual. Hit subscribe while you're at it for daily Swift uploads. Hit the bell icon so you get notified when I do upload. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys in the next video.